November 2021. I was working as a freelance real estate photographer, mostly doing high-end residential listings in the suburbs of Connecticut. It was a decent living, but the winter months were always slow. So when I got a call from a new agency asking me to photograph a distressed mansion on an emergency basis, I didn't ask too many questions. The pay was triple my usual rate. The only catch was that the house had been sitting vacant for 3 years, and I had to be there by 5 in the evening to catch the blue hour lighting. I pulled up to the property just as the sun was dipping below the tree line. It was a massive colonial-style estate, hidden behind a thick wall of unmanicured hedges. The gate was already open. I remember thinking it was strange that the agency didn't give me a lockbox code, just told me the back door would be unlocked. I grabbed my gear and headed inside. The air inside was freezing. It had that heavy, stagnant smell of a place that hadn't seen a person in years. I started in the foyer, clicking away, my flash echoing off the bare marble floors. I moved toward the kitchen, planning to work my way through the first floor quickly. That's when I saw it. On the center island, there was a single white ceramic mug. I walked over, thinking maybe a previous inspector had left it behind. I reached out and touched the side of the mug. It was hot. Not just warm, it was scalding. A thin wisp of steam was still rising from the black coffee inside. I froze, whispering. My heart started to thud against my ribs. I looked around the kitchen, but the shadows were long and deep. "Hello?" I called out. My voice just flatlined against the empty walls. No one answered. I told myself it had to be the realtor. Maybe they were upstairs and had just stepped away. I decided to keep moving, but I kept my hand near the heavy tripod in my bag. I headed toward the grand staircase. As I reached the second-floor landing, I heard a sound that made my blood turn to ice. It was the sound of a heavy door, somewhere down the long hallway, slowly clicking shut. I stood perfectly still. "Is someone there?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Still nothing. I should have left right then. I really should have. But I had this irrational fear of losing the contract, of being the unprofessional photographer who got spooked by a drafty house. I turned on my professional-grade flashlight and panned it down the hall. Every door was closed except for the one at the very end, the master suite. I walked toward it, my footsteps muffled by the thick, dusty carpet. When I reached the doorway, I panned my light inside. The room was empty of furniture, just like the rest of the house. But as I turned to leave, my light caught something on the floor in the corner. It was a pile of electronics. 3 different smartphones, 2 high-end cameras, and a stack of SD cards. They weren't old. They were modern, expensive gear. One of the cameras looked exactly like the model I was currently holding in my hand. I knelt down, my hands shaking, and picked up one of the SD cards. I didn't have a laptop with me, but I had my camera. I popped the card into my secondary slot and hit the playback button. Scared. The first 10 photos were of this house. Professional shots. The foyer, the kitchen, the dining room. Then the photos changed. The next 20 shots were of a man I didn't recognize, sitting at a desk in a small, dark room. In the last photo on the card, the man was looking directly into the lens, and he was holding a sign that had my name written on it in black marker. My full name. I dropped the camera. I didn't even think about the gear. I just turned and bolted for the stairs. I didn't care about the tripod or the lights. I just needed to get out. As I hit the landing, I heard a voice. It wasn't a scream or a growl. It was a calm, polite male voice coming from the bottom of the stairs. "You're early, Elias," the voice said. "I haven't finished the coffee yet." I stopped at the top of the stairs and looked down. Standing in the foyer was a man in a perfectly tailored suit. He looked like a high-end real estate agent. He was smiling, but his eyes were completely dead. He was holding a large, heavy ring of keys. "The agency told me you were coming at 5, he said, checking a gold watch. "It's only 4:45. You've disrupted the transition." "I'm leaving," I managed to choke out. "I'm leaving right now." I started to back away toward the master suite, the only room with a balcony. The man started to walk up the stairs. He wasn't running. He was just walking, step by step. "Fred, you can't leave yet," he said, his voice remaining eerily level. "We haven't taken the final portrait. The others are already in the archive. You saw them, didn't you?" I realized then that the electronics I found weren't just lost gear. They were trophies. This man wasn't a squatter. He was something much worse. He was a predator who used these distressed listings as a way to lure in solo workers, people who wouldn't be missed for hours. I turned and ran back into the master suite, slamming the door and shoving the heavy pile of cameras against the base. I ran for the balcony doors, but they were locked with a heavy-duty deadbolt that required a key. I looked around frantically. The man was at the door now. He didn't try to kick it in. He just slid a key into the lock. I didn't have a choice. I grabbed my heavy camera bag and swung it with everything I had against the glass of the balcony door. The glass exploded outward. I didn't wait. I jumped. It was a 15-foot drop onto frozen mulch. I felt something in my ankle snap, but the adrenaline was so high I barely felt it. I scrambled to my feet and looked up. The man was standing on the balcony, looking down at me. He wasn't angry. He just looked disappointed. He held up a smartphone, my smartphone, which I must have dropped in the foyer, and he started recording me. "See you soon, Elias," he whispered. I didn't stay to hear anything else. I hobbled to my car, threw it into reverse, and didn't stop driving until I found a lit-up gas station 5 miles away. When the police went back to the house an hour later, it was empty. Truly empty. No mug of coffee. No pile of electronics in the master suite. Even the broken glass on the balcony had been swept up and removed. The agency that had called me, their number was disconnected. The emergency listing didn't exist. It's been 2 years since that night. I don't do real estate photography anymore. I took a job in a bright, crowded office building where I'm never alone. But every few months, I get a notification on my phone, a new memory from my cloud storage. It's always a photo of me, a photo taken from a distance, in my driveway, at the grocery store, through my office window, and in every single photo, there's a white ceramic mug sitting somewhere in the frame, just out of focus, waiting. I don't know who that man was, or how many portraits he has in his archive. All I know is that he's still out there, and he's still waiting for me to finish my coffee. See you in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.